Hello, welcome back. Who are hoping I would come to the topic of castles with regard to locations. You are right. There was this topic planned and prepared. I actually did a lot of research just before this in my attempt to make sure that I'm as thorough as possible. So there is a lot of additional information here that I had not planned. So I'm going to put up a poll and ask you a question. My suggestion to you is grab some food, some drink, make sure you're relatively comfortable and ready for a lot of information. Like castles is a complicated topic. It's not actually easy. So if you were ever struggling with the topic, I can understand because there's good reason. So I'll put up this poll. By all means, throw in your questions as you see fit. Remember, when you respond to the poll, you can't change your mind. So be sure about what your answer is going to be. And I'm going to do my very, very best to cover as much as I possibly can in the time that we have. Okay, let's get on with the the video. I'm going to apologise now. I am still very phlegmy and struggling to keep it all together with this time of the year, and it's probably going to continue until we get into summer here in New Zealand. Hi, welcome to... Oh, hang on, where are we? That's not working. Why is that not working? Oh, that's there. Okay, there we go. That's better. All right. Hi, welcome to How to D&D. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. The topic for today is Dungeon Master Preparation. This is lesson 4, where we create locations. I talk about the creation of a location for your adventure. So there's a few things I want to say right now, and I'm going to give you an overview and then sort of an idea of what's happening for today. And that is, the first thing is, we're going to cover inspirations for creating a location, how to create a location details, the information that might be revolving around a location. I'm also going to cover a specific location layout. In the past, I've covered things such as the town and a tomb, but we're going to do a castle today. I will also be giving you some miscellaneous recommendations. As I do with all of my live streams, there's some sort of recommendation that I would give out. My objectives is I'm going to explain how to build adventure locations for your roleplay games or your Dungeons and Dragons game. I'm hoping I can demonstrate some aspect of this to you today. It may be not quite you're expecting, but I'm sure you'll get something out of it. And there will obviously be a participation aspect. In other words, I want you to be involved as much as possible. D&D Beyond has a combat encounter builder. It's free. You can use it, make all sorts of things with it. It doesn't really give you locations as such, but it certainly allows you to build up a combat encounter if you like. They are currently developing a virtual tabletop, a 3-dimensional virtual tabletop. I don't know how useful that will be for you, but I'll let you know more about that when that becomes available. Inspiration for creating locations. Let's go through the different things that you might be wanting to consider. When it comes to inspiration for creating a location, I find that real-world architecture and landmarks are really helpful. Find an image of a historic building or structure or area, and I often will use that as my starting point, and then I can make modifications to that. Books and movies offer many landscapes and places that are exotic that you can include in your game. Video games that have a role-play game aspect to it or an RPG play experience usually present quite a lot of dynamic environments that you can explore, and so you may be able to port some of those ideas over into your game as well. Pictures, paintings, landscape art done in oil or acrylic or even watercolor can be very useful. And then I would say pre-made role-playing game published adventures have many locations and maps illustrated for you with and detailed maps put out already that you don't have to do anything with, and you can port over and use in your game if you wanted to. Another good source for getting ideas for a location, not necessarily the map itself, but just a general location, is obviously Google search, Pinterest, ArtStation, DeviantArt has lots of images of locations that can draw your imagination in and help you feed it in some way. Okay, so that's the basics around inspiration for your location. Now, how do we actually create a location? I'm going to keep it really simple, so only there's a few things to consider. Again, I'm going to refer you back to real-world architecture plans, layouts. Deck plans of ships are useful, floor plans of buildings and ruins. And if you ever get a chance, check out Sly Flourish's fantastic locations and his preparation methods that he includes in there, because Sly Flourish's basic concept behind fantastic locations and how to prepare them is these key features. Make whatever you're doing old, make it large, make sure it has a unique feature or features, give it a function, it needs to be functional, and give it an interesting name. Okay, that's your key for creating a location that's fantastical for your game. Focus on making the location a reusable set piece is really helpful for future preparation, so you don't have to keep making new locations over and over again. Many locations tend to repeat themselves, so when you make those locations up, you will probably get to remake them, you can rename them, you'll often find the structure of them is very similar, so it's a very good idea to actually have a basic idea of some of the most repeatable and usable locations. Villages and towns, cities are all good examples of this. Castles, not such a great example, unfortunately, because castles tend to vary quite a lot. Strongholds, tombs are very similar. Pyramids, a maze is obviously very different, but the good thing about a maze is you can get a maze from anywhere. Okay, so you can pull them just out of a colouring book if you really wanted to, or an activity book. A temple, shrine, a mine. Mines are usually constructed the same way. A cave location, surprisingly, cave locations, when they're worn out by natural effects, don't actually get that deep, so you can keep them fairly simple and small. Monster lairs, death trap dungeons, obviously there can be some variation to them, but they usually have the same sort of themes going on. You're just moving the rooms around. The treasure vault, and a sailing ship. A ship that sails on the sea usually has the same sort of layout, so you can reuse these things. Once you make them, you've got them for as long as you like. The Dungeon Master Guide has some useful information on page 292 to 295 with regard to locations. Ensure the location is interactive for your characters. So whoever's playing the characters, they want to interact with the location. They don't want it to be just sort of standard, you can see but you cannot touch. Because remember, the location is the tool for one of the 3 pillars of gameplay, which is exploration. And I would argue that exploration is probably the largest aspect of Dungeons and Dragons. It's just that people don't realize that it is until they start playing the game. They may not necessarily be that might not be the thing that they enjoy the most. I've found a lot of people have been telling me that they enjoy the roleplay aspect, but exploration actually has an aspect of that tied in as well. Draw a picture with some digital tools or a pencil or on some paper. Maybe you're going to use a pen. Change what you need to from something that you're reusing, or you could keep it the same way. You could leave it unchanged. Like when you take the concept that somebody else has, it's all right to just port it straight over. Once you have your map drawn out, and you don't need to do it on gridded paper at all. You just need to label that map, give it a name, and then just mark in the different areas. What are these different areas representing? So that is the basics around, how do we actually create a location, and certainly how to make a location that's interesting. There's still a few more things we need to actually cover, and so that is the location details and information. And I'm going to give you some direction to some places where you can find that information. So some of the questions we need to ask is, who created the location? And I would suggest seeing the Dungeon Master Guide on page 100 for some ideas, or create your own. If you don't like any of the ideas on that table, then just ignore them and do your own thing by all means. What is the purpose of the location? Again, a very interesting question to answer. You don't have to have that answer set out before you actually run the location. Surprisingly, sometimes you can actually do that later on. But I would refer you to the Dungeon Master Guide on page 101 for some different purposes, why a location might exist. What is the history of the location, if you have time to do that, and why is a location important? Now, if you refer to the Dungeon Master Guide on page 101, again, that'll give you a few ideas. None of these charts or tables in the Dungeon Master Guide are that extensive. I totally understand that you're probably not going to get absolutely everything you ever wanted, but it gives you a starting point. Who inhabits the location that you have created? The general population of the location. Now, whether that be humans or monsters or a variety of different creatures, you determine that. And I'm going to refer you again back to the Dungeon Master Guide on page 101 through to 102 for some ideas about how to do that. Then we want to position some hazards or obstacles in the location to make things a bit more difficult for them to travel through there. Traps, if you want to include traps and it makes sense, then so be it. Put some traps in. Puzzles, if they would make sense and you think it would be enjoyable and make sense for that part of the story, they don't have to be... there doesn't always have to be a puzzle or a trap in a location. Natural hazards are very easy to develop because they're usually pretty obvious what they are. And I'm going to refer you back again to the Dungeon Master Guide on page 102 through to 105. It has a bit of information around it on that kind of concept. And then 296 to 298, okay? Those pages should be reasonably useful to you. Now, what about dressing your location? So we're going to give it some dressing. We're going to put some objects in here, some items, some furniture, add some features to the location with some aspects that can be interacted with or manipulated because we want them to do that, right? So this is part of the... it's not just moving around a location. We need to interact with the things in that location. So this is all part of developing our exploration aspect of the game. This is the focus we need to put our energy into. Again, I'm going to refer you back to the Dungeon Master Guide for page 298 through to 301, where it actually has some pretty good ideas, and there's a fair amount of them too. So don't consider those pages useless to you. They aren't. They're actually quite useful. Right, some miscellaneous recommendations that I have for you with regard to creating your locations. You don't have to be good at drawing a location map. I think this is one of the things that people get caught up on the most. And I can't make my own locations because I'm no good at drawing and I'm no good at drawing a map. Okay, because you're not selling this map to anybody, okay? It's just for your game, more than likely. So you don't have to worry about it being professional. Your player character and your players probably won't care that much. And if they're going to give you a hard time about it, there's actually something wrong with them, not with you, okay? It's not necessary to use or learn map drawing software. It's nice if you have it there and you're able to use it and willing to use it and have the time, because it takes time to learn how to use map drawing software. There are alternative methods to constructing a map, and you don't have to use software. So many different maps have been made for fantasy locations that you can just steal or borrow existing maps that are out there. So you don't need to worry about making your own stuff. And as I said, many of these locations are actually got the same structure, and really all you're doing is just reproducing what somebody else has already done. So you might as well just take what somebody else has already done in many cases. That's not always going to be the case, but you can make slight adjustments to an existing map, and now it's kind of your own. You've done your own thing with it. Now, I'm hoping that this was useful to you, and if it was, fantastic. Please let me know in the comments section what you found useful out of this. And I'm hoping that in the future that we will have more discussions about the different locations that you can include in your game. So use the comments, ask your questions, give your feedback if you have any advice you would like to share with people. Let me know what you think of what I've just talked about. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. Okay, I'm not gone, people, but I am just going to go quickly back to the camera in my face, and I want to go through the chat. Now, I guess the reason I wanted to do that was because I just wanted to make sure I've got a good pulse on what's going on and where people's heads at. I have certainly got a lot of information that I want to talk about today, so I'm going to do that. But before we get on to castles, because I'm definitely going to talk about castles, so if you were here for me to talk about castles, I have. Really hard to research, can I just say right now? And so it's one of the hardest things to deal with. I've found it difficult. I'm sure everybody else has found it difficult at some point. So let's have a look at the poll and to say hi to some people. Hello, Agile Monk. Agile Monk is a patron and supports me on Patreon. This is where all of this information that I do in my live streams will go. A lot of the lessons that I put together will wind up as PDFs. Anything we make in these live streams will go up as an easily edited document, like an open source document that you can just do whatever you like. And it's like as little as $1 a month to get everything that goes up there. So there's quite a lot going up. So yeah, that's something I should probably say is if you want to support this thing continuing, me doing this over and over again, with different topics and different locations, the best way is on Patreon, but Super Chat and Super Stickers are always welcome. Okay, now, Dr. Zatov, I'm going to get your name, I'm going to butcher your name, I'm sorry right now. The doctor's in the house, how's it going? Thanks for producing your content, you're the best. Well, look, thank you for saying so. Hello, Spirit Wolf. How are you doing, Spirit Wolf? Okay, let's go into the poll quickly, and then I'm going to talk about the castle. So, do you have trouble creating castles? 43% said yes out of 7 votes. 29% said no. Sometimes 14%, and just watching 14%. Okay, all right. So we're going to leave that poll going, and I'm going to go straight into my slide and the information I collected on castles. And I was doing research on castles in the wee early, late at night. Last night, I was still working on stuff, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much to deal with. Okay, so let's get over to the topic. I just need a drink of water, and we're into it. I'm going to apologize now. I have upgraded all my slides for 4K, but it's very hard to get a pre-existing layout for a map for a castle that is of a high quality, and because the layout of a castle was so different and varied, there's actually it's hard to find one that sort of does most of the work for you without going off on some strange tangent. So let's take you over to that screen. I'm going to show you the slide, and I will talk through the topic. And then we'll go into showing you some tools. I think that's the intention for today. I don't think I'm going to have the nonce to be able to deal with something like building a castle location, but we'll see. We'll see how I feel about this whole thing. All right, castles. Unfortunately, when it comes to a castle layout, you would think there would be a standard castle layout, and there isn't, which is why it's so difficult to make castles in your fantasy games and to make them feel like they are real and they are functional and they belong there. Unfortunately, all castles were constructed differently throughout history. There was often at least some patterns that were used over and over again, but a lot of that information has been lost in the archives of our history. But there were some general standard features that castles would normally have. Not all castles have all these features, but I will certainly talk about each one, what would be there, what their purpose was, and then you can decide what you do with this. Okay, we're going to start off with the Gatehouse. It is the most defensible part of the fortress. Okay, it is the place where if you had to set up any defenses, it was important. Now, why? Because it was the gatehouse. This usually had a gate. It was the entrance. It was positioned right at the castle entrance, which is where you would normally try to attack, because if you have a gate or a door or a portcullis, that was usually the weakest part of the castle. So you had to put all your defences into that aspect. Everything else was much harder to get at. A gatehouse contains quite often multiple trap mechanisms or obstacles to stop intruders, like a strengthened gate, so you would actually have metal bands over it. They won't necessarily be made out of wood. It might be a combination, or it might be just a solid metal gate. But you would also have, even if they got past the main gate, then you would also have a portcullis, which was basically all made out of metal, and you could see through it, but the holes were relatively small. But it was actually difficult to actually get past this, and while they're trying to get past this, they are standing right underneath the murder holes. This is where you would pour your boiling oil. You would obviously have a drawbridge if you could. If you had a gap, that is, you'd try to put a drawbridge in if there's a gap between the castle and the rest of the land surrounding you, to stop them getting to the gate. You would have arrow slits positioned very, above, so you could shoot down on anybody trying to enter in the front gate of your castle. And they would always have arrow slits that would be connected to a sleeping quarter of some kind. So sleeping quarters were important because you don't know what sort of hours your troops would be doing. And this was actually called the guardhouse. So the gatehouse was usually connected to a guardhouse as well, because you didn't want to have your guardhouse too far from your gatehouse, because that's where you would need to send your troops quite often. Okay, the next part I wanted to sort of go into in a little bit of detail, but not a huge amount of detail, and that is the Great Hall. This is a large room. Usually it had a fireplace. It was usually centered, positioned at the center of the castle in the main keep, which I'll talk about in a second. As I said, there would be a fireplace to keep it warm. There would be long tables and benches to sit at. The Great Hall had multiple purposes, not just one. It was a place where you would eat your meals. Business would be conducted here. Regional judgment would be administered by lords and barons and kings and queens for anybody who did something they shouldn't be doing, if they would be naughty. Entertainment was performed here in the Great Hall. And the servants would sleep at night on straw in the Great Hall. They would not necessarily have their own sleeping quarters, because when you have a castle, castles were expensive, and so you really had to make sure you utilized all the space that you had. So to do that, a lot of rooms had multiple purposes rather than having just one purpose. Okay, there would also be, and because people would die in castles if they were under siege, you would also have a chapel. Usually it was very small. It was not like a full-blown church or temple. This chapel was designed for doing the one thing that people needed. They needed a place that was quiet where they could go and pray. It would have an altar. There would usually be at least one table, a lectern. This is basically like a stand where you could put your notes on and then talk to an audience. There wouldn't necessarily be that many seats in a chapel for a castle, if any, in some cases. A pulpit, you would include a pulpit, a few bench seats if there was space to do so, candlesticks obviously to keep the location lit, a holy symbol of some kind, even though apparently we're not supposed to be worshipping holy symbols if you are a Christian, but you're doing a Dungeons and Dragons fantasy world, so your holy symbols don't fall under that criteria. There may well be a piano or an instrument of some kind. Often it was a piano for playing music as well. And then, of course, there would also be your religious books. Now, if you were a Christian, it would be the Bible, and in whatever fantasy world you've created, it'll be a book related to the religion that is being practiced by the people in this castle. Okay? The kitchens were neat and clean, and they had to be, because this is the most dangerous location in the castle. This is where fires could start. So they had to keep it neat. They had to keep it clean. They had to be well organized. There were wooden work tables usually for preparing food. There would be a cooking alcove with hot coals. Now, when I say a cooking alcove, it was designed that whole area would be made of stone. Even if because apparently castles could also be made of wood, not necessarily stone. This is one place where the alcove itself would have to be made of stone. This was to ensure that things did not catch on fire. You did all your cooking here. You never used an open flame as such. You would not be using wood. You would use coal, and the hot coals would cook your meal. There would be a large pot or cauldron for stewing things and boiling things. You would normally have a butter and cream tuning barrel for making butter and cream, of course. And then you would have meat spit skewers. So meat would be cooked over the coals, usually with a spit stand, and then of course a big metal rod that would go through the animal, come out the other side, and you would then set it on that, and the animal would be slowly turned and cooked over a period of time. You would include things like clay pots for putting stuff in. Clay pots retained heat well. It was much more expensive to have metal pots, so clay pots were much more popular, particularly in the medieval times. And then you would also have cooking utensils, so things that allowed you to actually spoons and ladles and knives and so forth, forks, anything that required you to do any kind of preparation. Okay, so that is the kitchen area. Again, most dangerous place in the entire castle, where potentially the place could burn down if you did not keep it clean and you did not keep the fat away from places you did not want it to burn. Surprisingly, and a lot of people get confused, is why are there stables in a castle? And I actually had to look at this and think, well, it's because we think castle siege, why would you need to ride a horse around in a castle if the castle's under siege? But the thing is, a castle included stables because they weren't always under siege, and they needed to transport information and do patrols. And the easiest way to do that was not on foot, but on a horse. So you needed to have stables, and the stables would be kept within the walls normally of the castle. Now, not all the stables were necessarily inside the walls of the castle. You might have horse stalls or a stable outside of the castle walls, but generally stables were inside the castle walls, depending on the size and type of your castle. A stable would include a number of horse stalls. Some designs included a main corridor that would run down the middle, and you would have your stalls to the left and right, either side of you. And then the following items would be included on the walls, things like, or inside this stable. You would normally have hay on the floor. You would have animal feed bags and animal feed available in sacks, but also bags for bringing it up to the animal's mouth. You would have buckets, and the buckets would do all sorts of things. They would be used for moving and removing rubbish and poo and all sorts of horrible things, but they would also be used for feeding the horse in terms of water. You didn't always have a water trough in a stable. Sometimes it would just be a water pail that you'd fill up, and you would put it in front of the horse, and the horse would drink from that. You would have a yard broom that would have a stiff head to its broom, shovels for moving stuff around that needed to be removed, such as big piles of poo and other things, rakes for moving your hay around, a bit and bridle. Usually you would have a number of these hanging on the walls. A heavy blanket. The heavy blankets were one to keep the horses warm. There would be some set aside for keeping the horse or the animal warm at night when it got very cold, because the stables weren't necessarily that warm. But also another thing you needed to consider is you needed to have heavy blankets that would go underneath the saddle itself to make sure that the saddle didn't cause any damage to the horse's back. So you needed to have those sorts of blankets as well. Then, of course, you would have stacks of saddles. You would have horseshoes and probably a box of them of various sizes, and of course they'd have to be sort of made to fit, because not every single horse has the same sized hoof. And then you would have some horse grooming tools. Now, horse grooming tools could be anything from brushes and combs. These are large brushes and combs, but it would also include hammers and nails and so forth for dealing with the horseshoe, and also clippers for actually cutting the hoof. The things would have to be removed at times, so you needed a few of those sorts of tools. And also you would have to have some sort of shear for actually grooming the mane of the horse or the animal that was living there, okay, or being housed there. A lot of information on stables, people. A lot of information on stables. The workshop or smithy usually would have a forge, of course, with bellows, with a range of blacksmithing tools. And these are the sorts of tools you would normally find in the blacksmith area or the workshop of your castle. You would have at least one anvil. There may, in fact, be two, a large one and a small one. Hammers and a variety of different sizes with different purposes. Vices, these are things for holding stuff, but they weren't the kind of vice we're used to, so a different type of vice. They look more like, I guess, a pair of large tongs that you would crank in. Then, of course, you had actual tongs, long tongs for putting things into your forge and heating them up and then pulling them back out again. You'd also have your chisels for actually cutting metal and bars and so forth and sheet metal. So there had to be some sort of chisel, and for making indentations. You would have a punch for punching through metal, for making in a hole. Bags of coal for your forge. Hardy tools. Hardy tools did a lot of different things. And I couldn't possibly go into everything because, one, I'm not a blacksmith, but just trust me, hardy tools filled in all the other gaps. And then you would have like a cone mandrel. Usually there would be at least two, a small and a large one for various purposes. And that was generally most of the tools you would have. Then you would have all your stock. That is your rods, your bars, and your not so much sheet metal, but you at least have metal that was in I guess what can we call it? It's not so much of a bar; it's more like a ribbon. But you would have your stock that you would actually work with. That's a lot of stuff, I know, people. I know. So stay with me. The keep was usually the fortified central tower or building in the middle of your castle. Okay, this contained the Great Hall, and also occasionally it would have sleeping quarters in it, depending on the keep's size. Now, some castles had nothing but a keep, and there would be nothing else. They were essentially a specific type of castle where you had to house everything in just the keep, and that was it. It was just a reinforced tower, and it was the keep. A very particular type. It was very popular because it was cheap. You could put them up fast. The only problem is you could usually only put in maybe 3 or 4 rooms, and from the records that I've seen on the internet, it indicated to me that they are hard to find and it's hard to determine exactly what was there. But usually if you only had 3 or 4 rooms, it would be as simple as you had a great hall. You probably didn't have any sleeping quarters. Everybody probably slept in the great hall. You would probably have a kitchen area to deal with that. You probably had a storage location for food and other supplies and equipment. And you probably had a place that dealt with the troops basically positioning themselves. And that's it. You wouldn't even have a stable because there wasn't space for these things. This is a very, very small castle. But large castles included a keep with other things as well. You would normally have a water well, provided you're not dealing with a simple single tower, such as a single keep tower, and that's it. There would be a water well, usually the only source of water for the castle during a siege, and it would be a deep bore. So it would be bore water, and you'd have to drill down real deep to get that water and draw that up to the surface, and that's where they would get their water from. Because you needed to have water for quite a long time, months, potentially years if you're really unlucky, depending on the size of your castle. The bailey was the inner courtyard in the middle of the castle, okay? And this is basically made up of a selection of important buildings. So when I say bailey, what I mean is it is the open area or the area that's inside the outer walls, which I'll talk about in a second. So the bailey would include a courtyard. There would be kitchens linked to this, maybe a chapel or chapels, barracks maybe here, stables, workshops, even servant houses, potentially depending on the size of the castle, and some maybe servant halls, okay? Some castles would have an inner bailey area, and then other castles would have an outer bailey area. You'd have to have a very large castle to have an inner and outer bailey. Often there would just be the single bailey, which that would be the inner bailey, and there would not be an outer bailey, just because you didn't have enough stone or money to actually build something larger. Also, too, not all castles had a bailey. As I was saying before, you can have a castle that just is made up of a single tower, which was just a keep. Okay, right, next. If you have a larger type of castle, it would include towers. There could be one tower, there may be many towers as part of your castle. Towers were usually a defensible lookout with battlements to hide behind from missile fire. And then, of course, you would then shoot down or throw things off them at your invading troops. Now, one of the things you're probably wondering is, and I haven't mentioned it, and I often do mention these topics, and I haven't put it in my notes, but I'm going to say it right now. It was not uncommon for there not to be a toilet or lavatory or a place to do your business. Okay, if you needed to go and have a whiz or do a number 1 or a number 2, it didn't matter. You found a bucket, you did your business there. The bucket went up to the top tower and they threw it over the top at whoever was invading. It sounds disgusting, but that was practice. That's how they did things. Okay, in a bucket over the side onto whoever was trying to get into the castle. There is the curtain wall. We need to talk about this. The curtain wall is the strongest built outer wall that surrounds the keep and the bailey. It is the one wall that had to be the highest so that people couldn't climb over it. It also had to be the strongest to withstand any kind of attack, whether that be from missile fire, from a catapult or trebuchet or a cannon. Usually if you had a castle that was just made out of stone and not brick, it could make it very, very weak. So later on they started using brick, because when something hits that and cracks it, you only lose one of the bricks rather than the whole wall structure starting to crack. And that's a bad thing, right? Large castles included a dungeon underneath the castle with prison cells. And this was usually very simple. It was not some sort of complicated location that looks like the dungeons that we use in our current games. So if you're thinking about that sort of dungeon, no, it probably just had a single staircase going down with maybe a one room for your guards to sit at a table, and then you would just open a door and there would just be rows of prison cells, depending on the size of the dungeon. Some dungeons might only include 1 or 2 prison cells, and that's it. The last thing I want to talk about is the moat. Not all castles had a moat, but this was a deep trench dug around the entire castle outer wall. Sometimes it was filled with water, sometimes it wasn't, but it made it difficult for invaders to cross, and that was the whole purpose. In some cases, they would have water in the moat and pour oil into the moat, so it would mix with the water. The oil would sit on the top, and when there was enough oil floating around on the surface of the water, they would light it with a torch. It would go up, and that would make it even harder for troops to get into the castle. That is not something that you would normally do too often if you could help it, because you will run out of oil eventually, so you would really have to be careful about when you decided to do something like that. But it's certainly a technique that I'm sure got used more than once, and certainly was used around the murder holes or the front gate of a castle. Another thing that you could do with a moat is, if you did not have enough water or a way of filling it with water, is you would put sharpened stakes in there, and that just made it much more difficult to get past everything. Okay, and that's the basics around a castle. I know I've been talking for a long time. You've been looking at an image of a simple castle, and I've been explaining stuff. So let's go back to my face, and let's have a little chat about things, and then I'm going to show you some stuff, because that's what I do here. I show you some stuff. Oh, okay. All right, so now if you're wondering what's going on with my camera is on a slider now. So it is mounted on a very expensive camera, but it has to be above the screen that I've got, and the screen's quite tall and large, so I can actually see things nowadays. So it does make it a little bit... I'm short, people, I'm actually not that tall, so it doesn't work that well. That's why I always look like I'm looking down. It's because I'm actually looking straight ahead. I'm not looking down. Anyway, let's see how this works. So Agile Monk, oh, thank you for the super sticker, Agile Monk. I appreciate the $10 super sticker. Thank you very much. Now, there is an old book called Encyclopedia of Things That Never Were. Plus another great book is Illustrated Dictionary of Historic Architecture. Now, I didn't know that those existed. Thank you for mentioning those. I would imagine they might be a bit hard to find. I'm probably going to take everything that I discussed here today. I'm going to take it past my friend who has got a PhD in history, and get him to sort of rifle through things and tidy things up so things are a little bit more sort of exact. Remember, if you're using a castle in your game, it doesn't have to be exactly like the real thing. You can make alterations and changes to that, and it's perfectly fine. It should be expected. It's a fantasy castle now, right? It does not have to be exactly like the medieval castle. So you can add things in that I haven't discussed. I'm just giving you the basics and sort of an idea of what the basic layout from my rather poor looking image, which I hopefully will be able to upgrade in the future. Okay? All right, Spirit Wolf, what have we got here? Do you have problems with keeping the outer walls thick at the base and less at the top, mapping the castle? Curious as to your method for mapping for players. No, I don't think I've really had that problem. So to give you an idea, and I think this is where I need to actually show you somebody else's maps, I usually keep everything reasonably simple, right? You've got to understand the wall of a castle, the outer wall, the curtain wall that I was talking about before, was actually quite wide. It was wide enough you could walk along the top of it. Do you know what I mean? You had to have space for a battlement. And so therefore there needed to be space for troops to walk along and hide behind those battlements. So the outer wall was actually quite thick. It wasn't thin. Some walls were so thick they actually had a cavity inside, so you could actually have troops moving inside the wall. Not a great idea if you ask me, but that's a pretty big castle. You know, we're talking about like a castle that surrounds a full-blown city. What would be a good example of that? Jerusalem? Really early Jerusalem might be a good example. I could be wrong about that, but I think that's right. Yeah. But yeah, so the outer wall was actually quite thick. So it would be easy. You could easily have 5 feet thick outer curtain wall. That would not be unusual. It may even be more than that, depending on the type of castle and the amount of money they had available to them. Horses were a prestige, so during siege it looks better when they have a powwow. Well, I suppose yes, that's true. Horses in medieval times were very expensive, which is probably why during the American West, if you stole somebody's horse, it was a hanging offence. It was a big deal because horses were so expensive and so important. Not only could you wind up stealing somebody's horse and leaving them out in the middle of nowhere, and they would never be able to get back to civilization alive, because the only way to get anywhere was by horse because everything was so far apart. So you pretty much condemned somebody when you stole their horse to death. That wasn't so much the case in Europe. Certainly parts of Europe maybe that would apply, but a big open continent in certain places of the American continent would be a big deal. It certainly would be a big issue if you did something like that in Australia, because it's a whole big huge continent itself. So yeah, definitely horses were a big deal. So you had stables there. You kind of had to have stables at some point. Okay, but as I said, there were castles that didn't have stables or a stable for horses. You share good stuff. Well, thank you, Spirit Wolf. So now that I've talked about creating your own locations, which a lot of you may have already seen this material before, and I've talked about castles rather than other things, let's show you some stuff. So I was talking about, now Normally in these things, I would make something with you. I just don't have the energy. I apologize. The next time I come back round to talk about castles, and I probably will have expanded on it, everything that I said before, I will make a castle. But today's not the day. Instead, I'm going to show you somebody who does very good maps and does make castles, and that would be Dyson Logo. Now, don't freak out when I say Dyson Logo, okay? I know some of you hate his maps because they don't look very good on a virtual tabletop, but he does make very good maps. They're very easy to follow and understand, and so therefore I wanted to actually show off his stuff. I will actually give you the website link as well while I'm here, so that you can go and find his stuff. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go into chat, and we'll drop it in here. So if you've never come across Dyson Logo, that's the website. This is actually the page I'm looking at right now. Go back to that. So this is a ruined castle. You'll notice this castle is very, very simple. There's only 5 locations. And you might be thinking, well, that's just not enough. But truthfully, that's probably about right. I'm just going to move my microphone a little bit further in, people. Okay. So that's actually probably about right. Okay. You're probably on the right track. Like I said, a lot of castles, when there was just one tower, would consist of only 3 or 4 rooms. So this was probably exactly what you were looking for. Now, if you were to reconstruct this castle, that meant that you really only had a hall, a cooking location, a storage location, and maybe a place for your troops to sleep if they weren't sleeping in the Great Hall. Okay. And there wasn't much else other than that. It was really, really super, super simple. It was designed to be used as a fortified location. There might be structures outside the castle, but you wouldn't obviously be able to use them during a siege. Okay? And you could put these like anywhere. You build up a mound. If you could find a hill, you'd stick one of these castles on there. Obviously not super complicated and difficult to explore. I realize this. So if you thought Fred, it's very simple and basic. Yes, it is. But that's often what castles were like. Okay, so if I just want to just cycle through, if I can find what I was looking for before, that'd be great. Here's a tower. Here's another example of what a very basic castle might look like. Something like this, where you would have more than one level. Of course, you can't have one level to your castle. There has to be more than one level. And each level would serve a purpose. There might be something that was actually going on here, but normally there would be just a place to sort of sleep in the middle, and then of course you would then attack from your arrow slits around the tower itself. Okay, so you could defend it from all sides. So there's another good example of it, and he's got a couple of different maps there of that. Now if I can go back, we will. Okay, good, we can. Do I want that? No, I don't. No, I don't want that. That's the one I already showed you. There is actually a couple more down here. If I can just scroll down fairly quickly. The pyramid map I'm going to come back to. We're going to talk about pyramids in the future, but not today. Okay. Let's say temple. No, that's not what we want. Now, if you look at real castle maps, sometimes you'll do quite well and sometimes you won't. A bastion, we'll do this one here. This here is a good example of a slightly more complicated castle location, and with multiple levels going up, so you don't have just one level. Okay, so you can put in different things that are going on, and he's done a pretty good job of sort of laying out what that would look like. You've got a bailey. It's a very small bailey. You see the thing in the center there? I don't know if you can make that out. In the center, that would actually be your stables. Those little those open walls. There's no doors on them or anything. Right in the center, that would be the stable area. Okay, if you're wondering what the heck that's all about, that's the stable area. So this has got a couple of maps here. Dyson Logo, I know a lot of people hate his stuff, and I know Wizards of the Coast has been using more and more of his stuff, and people are more and more frustrated by that. Yeah, there's a place for it sometimes. Right, now where else do I need to be? No, that's a tavern. Is there another one? I thought there was one more that I could show off. Here we go. No, that's not. I thought it was. That's not the one. Here we go. Here we go. This is another good example of a very sort of simple castle design. You can see the image that he's drawn from, and it is super simple, people. Like your main area, your upper area. You're basically this in the center of the main area. This would be your courtyard or your bailey, and then you would have your side rooms. There does not appear to be a major hall in this castle, which is kind of strange in terms of how he's designed it. He's got almost four towers positioned on this thing, but they're all broken down and ruined, so you know. And there's an area underground. This is probably not necessarily deliberately a dungeon area, but yeah. You didn't normally put a dungeon into a castle unless you had plenty of money. Do you know what I mean? But you're doing fantasy stuff, so you can put whatever you like in there. Is there another one that here we go. Here's a citadel. Here again, this gives you a guide of what castles were like. See, they've got a dungeon in this one. And the dungeon's super simple. All you can see is like there's a first room for the guards, and then from there we just go into prison cells. Okay, your main area in the middle here would be I think is this the main hall? I think they've got a main hall here. This is one tower, and you've got some adjacent quarters coming off it. There'll be a kitchen in here somewhere, and then you have your higher upper levels. There's obviously some other eating areas here. Most of it is just for living. And then as you go up, more and more of this is going to be more focused on just defending it from assault. Okay, so that's that lot of stuff that I wanted to show off to you. But there's something else I wanted to show you as well. Something that for those of you who are struggling to get your game moving and you need to do things fast and you just don't have time to do stuff, I'm going to point you in the direction of a tool to make it much easier for you to find what you require, but also to build the things that you want. Imagine that you have like 5 or 10 minutes and you don't have time to make up an adventure location. You just need something like quick. You just need to press a couple of buttons and get it done. Now, Dungeon does a random sort of map and gives you some different things in those locations. I could show you that, but that's just like usually just a dungeon. Do you know what I mean? And it looks very hokey in many respects. It doesn't necessarily give you what you want. I mean, it has its purposes sometimes, but if it's not your speed, I've got something that might appeal to you far more. Just let me go through the chat really quickly, and then I'm going to show you what this next thing is. And actually, while I'm doing this, I'm going to actually plug in. No, I'll plug it in a second. Let's answer the questions that are here first. Brad Hazard, how's it going? Hello, Brad Hazard. I recommend watching Brother Cadfael series. I feel they are the most realistic medieval times. Okay, sure. I don't know too much about them, Brad. Yeah, never heard of them. But thank you for suggesting it. How's it going, Seeker? Hello. Interesting. Hadn't heard of Dyson. Dyson logo. Look, he doesn't just do castles. He does all sorts of stuff. His website's full of free maps. The only thing I think you might struggle and find frustrating with Dyson Logo's maps is I know he's got tags, but for the life of me, I have not been able to figure out how to do a search for a particular type of map. Now, maybe that's because I'm not thinking, maps. All maps, city maps, no. So at the top of his website, you'll find Dyson Logo. You go to the map section and then it breaks it down into different types of maps. You've got city and town, adventures, there's all maps, there's inns and taverns section, multi-page maps, geomorphics, vertical. I don't think it breaks it down quite to the level that you want, although there are extending menus off some of that. So that might help a little bit. Not a lot though. That's probably the biggest hassle you're going to have is like, how do I do a search for a particular type of map rather than having to cycle through the whole lot to find what I'm after? That could be a drag. And he does have a Patreon as well. Okay, down the side there are a few things and tools that allow you to make it easier to find stuff, but there's not like there's a search bar if I remember right. Okay. Break time. Oh, thank you for mentioning that, Spirit Wolf. Yes, I do need to take it. Perhaps now only subscribers can post the restriction on URLs in chat. Can be filtered, can be lifted, or maybe not. I think with the URLs, not all of the maps on Dyson Logo are free, but a lot of them are. Some of them you do have to pay for, but I can tell you now, a lot of those maps are just free. You can just get whatever you like, okay? There are a lot of places where you can just get free maps. But the great thing about these maps is you can take this map and you're going to trace over it while it's on your computer screen. And then once you've traced over it, you're going to then use that map and do your own thing with it. You've got your basic layout and you're ready to go. That's what I would suggest to you. Or you print it out and then you just do some modifications to it. Yeah. I hope that answers your question, John B. Perhaps yeah. So Seeker, I think it's working keeping the bots out. So I am a little concerned that people can't ask questions when they're not a subscriber. But subscribe. 20 minutes later, you can start asking me questions and having a chat. And yeah, I think at this point here, somebody was telling me I'm too humble. But yeah, I think at this point, I do so much stuff. Like I'm going to cover stuff that you're going to need. At some point, I'm going to cover that stuff. So you might as well subscribe if you haven't subscribed and ask the questions. It can't hurt. I'm on live 6 days a week. So anyway, let's go have a quick break. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to show you this website. So I'm going to put this website up now. This means those of you who have 5 minutes of waiting for me to go and use the toilet can go, and if you want to, you can go and check it out. This is called Pen and Pencil Hex Roll. Pen and Pencil Hex Roll. Currently, any person in chat who tries to put a website link, except from you, is stopped. So yeah, no, I know, I'm aware of that. If somebody tries to put a link in and I can see it, I'll usually allow it. But yeah, yeah, it's set up right now. I suppose it's really restrictive. Anyway, go check out pen dice paper hex roll, and there's a sandbox tool there. And trust me, I think you're going to be very pleased with the end result of that little excursion. It's worth your time checking out. I'm going to be back in about 5 minutes. Okay. Right. I'm heading back in. Today is the day where I show you lots of stuff, people. So if you wanted lots of resources, things to make your life a little bit easier, it's all about the location today, finding you stuff that you can use. And I'm sure you're going to find something that you haven't seen before. So let's come back to here and let's have a look at how people are going. I'm going to go through the chat and then I'm going to actually kind of show you this tool, this hex roll. Hello, Nacho Man. Nacho Man is a patron, and I appreciate his support on Patreon. How's it going, buddy? Yeah, Castle Ravenloft in Strahd makes my head hurt. I can understand that. You've got to understand it's a very intimidating map. You're right. So one of the things about Castle Ravenloft in that map, and I wonder if I should pull it up. I just pull up D&D Beyond. I'll pull up that map, and then I can kind of talk to it. It's Curse of Strahd. Curse of Strahd is here, which means I can probably find the map. Cover art. No. Just give me the map. Maps. Taroka cards. Where is the castle itself? Yeah, let's go there. I mean, I should talk about this castle because I'm talking about Ravenloft, running Ravenloft as a one-shot and at the end of the week for Halloween. So it makes sense that I actually talk about Castle Ravenloft. If I can just find the map. Where's the main floors? Okay, here's part of the map. That's part of the map, but that's not what's going to scare the bejesus out of you. Yeah. Okay, let's see if I can go into here. This is going to be a bit more interesting, I think. I think this is going to work out a lot better. This gives you the scope of the intimidation that this sodding castle gives you. All right, let's see if I can do the screen capture thingy and show you what I mean. Because I've run Castle Ravenloft before, and it is terrifying in many respects. It really is. It's truly terrifying to have to contend with. Okay. All right. So there are multiple levels to Castle Ravenloft. And Castle Ravenloft is not designed around a specific castle as such. It's got a lot of the ideas behind castle creation, but it's actually supposed to depict the crazy mess because it's not designed to be easily used. It's designed around how Strahd's mind works. So it's very easy to get lost and confused as to where you are because there's multiple ways going up and down. Some ways to get to some parts of the castle can only be accessed by a particular staircase or route. And so you can easily get lost. It's like a maze, okay, because that's what Strahd's mind is like. Now, that doesn't look bad right now. It's also an isometric and not looking down, so that doesn't help. But now, here's our main floor. This is only map 3. There's more than one. One of the things that will probably confuse you the most is the central staircase, the main central staircase that leads up to the other levels above it. But there's also a smaller staircase over here that only allows access to certain parts of the castle. That's the small one. There's a medium-sized one here, central winding central staircase that also winds up and goes to other parts of the castle. And then you also got a set of stairs that isn't central. It doesn't have a spiral sort of effect to it, and it goes somewhere else. So it's very easy to get lost. And that there are, if you look at just the main floor, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sets of stairs. No, 7 sets of stairs. 7 sets of stairs leading to different places within the castle. And to get to anywhere, you usually need to start with the main floor. That's the easiest way to understand, like, how do I get somewhere? I have to go to the main floor and find the right staircase to get me wherever I need to go. What I probably need to do in the future is explain how to navigate this sodding thing. But I've never been able to figure out an easy way to communicate it without confusing people. So if I ever do figure out how to communicate, how to actually navigate this mess to people, it's all very well being able to handle it and do it myself, but trying to explain it to somebody else, that might be a bit more difficult. If I ever figure out a good way of explaining that, I will do so. Now, these are the pictures, we don't need them. Here we go. Here's a level above the main level, and you can see again, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different staircases. 7. There's 7 different staircases, all leading to different locations within it. Not all staircases go to the very top too, which makes it worse. No, we don't need you. Thank you very much. Here's the level above that, and again, it continues on. Now, above this level here, usually we start to get towers. You'll start, the castle itself will break up into towers. And these are the places where you would normally have your player characters stay the night to sleep. Okay, K50 would be a good place to have them sleep. Or even, they could even sleep in K49, in the top area, you know, because Strahd doesn't sleep there anymore. He's dead. You know, then you have your other towers that go above, and these are mostly rooms or just vantage points. And then we've got our heart. So yes, a very intimidating castle, as you can see. It just goes on and on and on and on and on and on. Okay, and then that doesn't even count the lower areas. This elevator trap, for anybody who ever winds up trying to use the elevator trap in Curse of Strahd, I've never fully been able to understand what the heck was going on. It's so confusing. So if you never figured it out yourself, well, I never figured it out. A lot of people didn't. I hear it all the time. I see it on the internet. If you ever manage to figure out how to use the elevator trap, well done. It doesn't matter whether you actually used it, but if you managed to figure out how to use it, great. You did it. Did a lot better than a lot of us. It's an unholy mess. And yeah, okay. So let's pike out of here for now. And I don't need this, so we're going to go back over here and go back to the chat, because I want to show the hex roll thing, and I don't want to lose all my time, but we will go through chat fairly quickly now, so we can get onto it. Okay, Seeker. Yeah, no, yeah, go check it out. One-click sandbox world. That's exactly what hex roll is. You really only have to click once and it's done. Yeah. So there is actually a piece of software out there, Brad, that would do a lot of what Dyson does. It has his style. I can show you that if you like. You'll let me know in the comments section, but I'm going to go over to hex roll in a second and show people hex roll. So if you want to be able to draw a map using software very quickly, like within about 10-15 minutes, then I'm happy to show you something that will do that. It won't cost you anything, no money, okay, and you can sort of access it and fiddle around with it. It's relatively easy to learn, but to use it well, you do need to have sink a bit of time into it. But you can get started with some very basics like dungeons and caves and certainly underground and interior locations. Very easy to do. Okay. Yeah, that's right, Seeker. Yeah, no, it's very hard to see how to approach Castle Ravenloft with Battle Map. So when the adventure was designed, it wasn't actually really designed to use everything in the castle. A lot of people don't realize this, but Castle Ravenloft was designed to be a one-shot. where you could go anywhere. Like there was lots of different places you could potentially go, and you weren't necessarily going to go to every location within that one shot. So because the adventure would end. I'm going to explain more about that. Now it's all right. You've distracted me in a nice way. So let's get on to the actual topic that I wanted to show you, the sandbox rolling thing. I'm sure a few of you have already gone off and had checked it out, but let's go and have a little peeky at it, eh? No, that's not what I want. That's what I want. Hopefully it doesn't block anything. I certainly hope it doesn't. You'll let me know if it does, and hopefully I will notice. Okay, here we go. So this is hex roll. Very interesting. Generate now. All you need to do is press the generate now and you're done. But there are a few things you can control. There are some probabilities. You can change the probability of a mountain location. What it's going to do is it's going to create a sandbox location and fill it all in with all the things that you need. The only problem is this is designed for advanced Dungeons and Dragons rather than for Dungeons and Dragons 5e. So it requires you to substitute the monsters and creatures that pop up in here with the stuff from your monster manual. Okay, that's the only change you should need to make. Everything else will be perfectly fine because, and I probably should say this, Dungeons and Dragons 5e is so similar to Advanced Dungeons and Dragons it's not funny. Okay, all right, so you can change the probability. I can go up and down with this. I can make it 4, I can make it 3, I can make it 2. We'll leave it the same. I can do the same with forests, desert probability. I can change that. Plains, I can change that. Coastline. So if you don't want desert, then get rid of the desert probability, okay? And then you can go down and you can actually generate between 8 and 12 regions. So that'll be between 8 and 12 hexes, okay? So you can make it bigger or larger depending on what you want. Is it hexes? No, that's regions. So between 8 and 12 regions, and then it will then modify it. So hex count per region. So we're going to get between 4 and 8 hexes for mountain areas, 4 and 8 for forest, desert, So it's giving you a pretty even playing field. You can stipulate how many different settlements can be generated. Right now it's set to between 6 and 9, but you can change those numbers with the little arrows. You can change the probability of towns showing up or cities or villages. If you don't want a location that has any towns or cities in it and you want it to be sort of wilderness, wild, open areas, then you can do that. The number of dungeons that you might want to include in here, you can change that. These are dungeons usually refer to things that are underground, but it's not always going to be that case. So, you know, there's going to be a few things that will have to be... It will actually generate maps, people. It will actually generate maps within those hexes. Cave probability, temples, tombs, if you want them. So there's all these things that you can adjust. You can even include wandering monsters if you want, which probably won't be much help to you unless you're playing Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. But if you're playing 5e, maybe you'll use them and just shift out those monsters with the stat block for 5e. Okay, so you can include that as well. So wandering monsters can be included in your sandbox that's about to be created. So factions, builds factions for you. I know this sounds crazy. Literally, this is all done randomly. And all you need to do is, once you've gone through all the things you want to adjust, hit the generate button at the bottom or the top. So I'll hit the one at the bottom. And it will start working and doing something. So while that's doing, I'm going to drink some water. My computer is very fast, people. So if you find that when you pump this in, it takes a little while, it's because you probably don't have an i9 processor with a whole bunch of other things attached to it. So it does take a little while. So it's created the name of the empire. Down on the left, which you probably can't see because my face is in the way, we have all our little different things. And if I scroll up a little bit, you can see this is the sandbox that it's created. It's named stuff. It's got numbers beside it. Let me just go into OBS and shift my big hoary face and get it out of the way for you, because that's not what you're here for. You're actually here to actually see what this thing does, right? Can I put it up the top? Yeah, it's probably better. At the top or down the bottom? Down the bottom. Yeah. Yeah, let's get Fred out of the way. There we go. That's that, and then shift it over. There we go. That's better. Now you can actually see all the things. Now I can actually show all this stuff off to you. So it gives you the background, it gives you the different regions, it gives you a list of different regions, the names of them. You can see these are all active links. I'm going to click on some of this stuff in a minute and you'll see just how good this is. I have settlements listed down here, villages, towns, there's cities that are all been generated with information on them. There are 2 inns, the names of them. You're going to like this, people. Dungeons have been populated, already made for you. Don't have to do anything. Factions within the game. So you are like, you've got no time and you want to prepare like a whole section of a world. You can cut and paste a whole lot of this and use it. Okay. There are some, sorry, I'll just move that back to where it was. There are NPCs, rumors, and secrets included as part of this. So I've just shown you this, but you don't fully understand what you've got, do you? Because I haven't shown you exactly what you've got. So I could click on the Empire of Ishbar, and that's what we get. We get our basic overview. This is just going to give us the hex maps. I can actually click on each area, and these are active links. So if I want to, like, I want to know what the javelin fields are, I can just click that on, and it gives me what's in the javelin fields. Okay, it gives me the abandoned village, tells me what hex number it is. It's 48. Random encounters, if there are any. Okay, any information around that is there. I'll go back. I can hit on background. Gives me the background. Okay, there might be a major threat that has been created, so this gives me sort of like a what's this little campaign going to be about. That gives me something to work with. It gives me an NPC, some information on residents. So there's a lot of stuff there. Okay, now regions. I can click on regions and it'll go straight to regions. It was right underneath there. Regions are now broken up. It's numbered. It tells you, it gives you like a description. In this case, the dead adventurers, Hex 1. The trees here are naked and twisted. Their branches reach down like bony claws. Was this place cursed in days long gone? Okay, so that's sort of for you to decide to answer. The bodies of 6 dead adventurers were thrown to rot deep in the woods. And so that's what the player characters could potentially find. We've got a little bit around some random encounters here for this location. Not everything's going to be random encounter, people, so don't worry about it. You can replace the boars, the goblins, the panthers, whatever, with whatever you want. Okay, so scrolling down, I could keep scrolling down, but I don't want to do that. What I want to do is I want to use the sidebar because this sort of gives you a kind of a better idea of what's going on. Let's go with the Moon Watch of Dunes. That takes me to Hex 6. Talks about the bridge, gives me some random encounters. Now, did that one? Which one is it? The Light of Valor Fields. Okay, Light of Valor Fields. This is includes Hex, what do you call it? 13, 14. This is a village. Khazar. A little bit of information. Not a huge amount, but a little bit of information just to get you started. The Tomb of Burning Fire is included here. Now you'll notice that some of these have active links like the village, so I can go on to here and go to, if I need more information on the village, even if I come up with a hex, it only gives me a little bit of information. I can go to the village and it gives me a much more deeper rundown. It tells me which hex it is, what the population is, what the villages, shops and services are, a whole bunch of information, and a lot of these links are active. So if I need to know, like, there's an armory and weapons place, a Gina's archer, I can just click that on and it takes me there. Like, now I know what they sell in that location. I can go back. A lot of active links. The Wizard Mace Tavern, we've got the keeper, okay, the tavern keeper, the staff, a little bit of information on them. The menu is included. I mean, look, let's get real. Most players don't give a toss about the meal in a place like this. But if somebody's going to make it for you, it certainly makes it a lot easier for you to present to them, does it not? And a few NPCs. So It does an enormous amount, but I could keep showing you these different locations, but I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go and show you some settlements. There are different villages, so I can click on any location, that'll give me that. I click on a village, gives me the village, gives me a rundown of the village, okay, and the information there that I need. Cool. I can pick any of the villages depending on where they are located. And all of these are hyperlinked, so you can find everything. So if I need to know about the physician, I can click on the physician, and then we get the information on the physician. Like literally, information on there that you would normally have to create yourself, and you don't have to do any of that. I could go down to the inn. What if they go to one of the inns? Do I need to know information about it? I need to know about the Laughing Skeleton Inn, and I don't know anything about it. So what do? Sorry, people, I'm going to make myself even smaller because I'm still in the way. I apologize for that. Let's transition over. Fred is a tiny little speck. A speck on the window of your world. There we go. There we go. Speck me smaller. There we go. I'm small now. I've been shrunk. Okay. So we can go on to anything. If you need to know about a particular faction, if they're a member of a faction, the Hammers of Revel, we can click on there. It gives me all the information I need to know on that. Okay, so that's the inns. So I can click on any of the active inns and it takes me wherever I need to go. But you're thinking, Fred, though, I need a place to go adventuring with my player characters. I don't have any maps or locations drawn out in map form. Like, it's all very well you've given me this thing that's it's a sandbox. I could screen capture that and use that if you want to, which I would advise screen capturing your hex map to make life a little bit easier for you. But what if I actually want a place for them to explore? Well, all the dungeons have been created under the dungeon section. So the crypt of the Infernal Order, this is the crypt that's been created. It's been numbered. It's been drawn out for you. You don't have to do anything. Yes, it looks very old style, lots of funny, weird passageways, looks a lot more like a maze, and you just roll on down and it gives you all the information you need about each location. It breaks it all down, gives you random encounters, what you would find there, any treasure you would find, anything special about that location. It actually gives you, it actually does a really good job of breaking everything down. It's the kind of stuff that you would see with Donjon. Which is a much older website that does something very similar, okay? But it gives you all the stuff that you need. Okay, so that's that location. What about the Caverns of Savage Desire? Like, what if they go there? Well, now, here it is. It's numbered and labelled, and we just go down through here and figure out, okay, what exactly are we dealing with here? Different locations, wandering monsters, and it shows you which location we were dealing with, a little side map there. We can go to the Lair of the Unholy Blades, another cave, same sort of thing, Tomb of the Cursed Souls. Again, it looks very similar to the first one we had before. Remember, it's randomly generated, people. Much more complicated location. You can set all this stuff when you produce them. Remember, you've got a lot of dials that you can play with. I didn't play with many dials. Tomb of the Doom, Doom Lich. There's our Doom Lich. Here's the Tomb of the Burning Fire, and here's the Temple of the Mad Witch. So very basic maps. I can assure you now it's not going to give you the kind of variation that selecting your own maps will. But if you're at a push, you've got nothing else to work with, then it's there. The Fists of Power faction, it gives you a breakdown of Fists of Power faction if you need that. That's there. There's 3 of them here, 3 factions. Each one, if you click them on, gives you the information you need on them. Okay. Breaking Glass. Breaking Glass is basically like it's the big, huge list of all the NPCs that have been created for you, and there's a lot of them. You can see that each one has an active link. So you can go through, okay, A, B, C, D, I need to find a particular name. You can search that way. You can click on NPCs and it will just list the NPCs. Rumors, it gives you all the rumors that you might be able to throw out there. There's a huge list. Like, you know, one of the hardest things as a dungeon master is to create a list of interesting rumors, right? that lead them on particular adventures. Each of these have been hyperlinked as well, by the way, if you hadn't figured it out. And then if I hit secrets, which just scrolls us down a little bit further, this lists all the secrets in different locations that you might need to be aware of. So it's all there. It's up to you whether you use it or not. And frankly, I think that if you have no time and you need to build a location for them to explore in, this could kind of solve a lot of your problems. So if somebody said to you, look, you've got to spend some time preparing your game and you've got to spend hours doing that, and if in less than a minute or maybe in a couple of minutes you set your parameters and you produce this and you run this. Is that bad? Is that good? It's done most of the work for you. Obviously if there's things that you don't like, then you don't use it. But there's no excuse to not run a campaign now with lots of interesting locations because you have all the tools. I've just shown you all of the stuff that you can play with in your game. What do you think, people? Is this something that you would use? I mean, I would like you to let me know. Let me know in the comments section. Was there any point to me showing this to you? It's out there. Yep, it's out there. All right. John, this is a free site. Yep, there is a Patreon, but it is free. Yep, you can access it for free. Yeah, there are lots of resources on Hex. So let me just see. Where are we? That's all right. Stick to Cragmore Castle for now, Nacho Man. Cragmore Castle is sort of a mash between a single tower castle, really, in many respects, because there isn't anything else to it. There's no bailey. It is just a single tower. It's basically just a keep, and all the rooms are stationed within the keep, right? Okay, so you like that stuff. Okay, so, but I'm not finished. Today is the day of show and tell. Okay, so show and tell day. I'm going to show you some of the software packages that I've kind of been using and that you might find useful as well. If I can just find, I want to find something that's super simple for you. Dungeon Scroll. Dungeon Scroll is free. You don't have to pay for this thing. And so I will pull up Dungeon Scroll. Just give me a second. I will give you a link to it as well. Now this is currently in beta, this thing. So it's not finished. Let me put in Dungeon Scroll. You've probably heard about it. There's lots of different things. I'm trying to show you stuff that doesn't cost you money, people. Okay, I would prefer you to be able to go and use things that don't require you to go and buy something. I'm not promoting them because I am not sponsored by them. Okay, I have no interest in sponsoring any of that. But Dungeon Scroll is really useful. Once you learn how to use it, this is version 2. Let me just go over and sort of show you some of the bits and pieces here. Where is my screen? Window capture. There we go. I think that's going to work. All right. This here is Dungeon Scroll. Dungeon Scroll it's a very simple tool. Like you press the button to start. There is a sort of a rundown, old school maps. So you see they're drawn like Dyson's maps. And you can do interior stuff. You can also do exterior stuff as well. You can do isometric. It depends on what you want. Obviously, not many people are going to want isometric, so it's hard to navigate your head around. So press the button. We're almost in. You can use some presets. There are some presets if you're wanting presets. You just go down and have a look, and then, okay, now where is this button here? Run the scroller. Okay, now I need to make sure I put my face in a particular location that won't get in the way. This is your workspace. All right, this is your workspace. So I'm gonna find my head in the way. So I'm gonna just move it over there and transition over. Right, that keeps my head out of the way so you can see these little dials and bars. I'm not going to do very much. All I want to do is just show you how quickly you can create something. This is just basically a shape drawer. Pick some squares, draw a shape like so, and a couple of boxes. If you wanted a couple of boxes, you can have some boxes. And then of course you can link them all up if you want to. That's not an issue. Bring passageways in between them like that. That's what that tool does. You can put in a passageway. That's not too difficult to do. It can be wide, it can be narrow. You can put in doorways, of course, as well, like that. There, linking it up a little bit. We can put a passageway that leads from here to here. Okay, so we've got some passageways here. Now maybe we want to put some doors in here. Well, there's a door here. There's this little button here, door, and we just click it on with the button, left button, draw it to where we want to, finish, door is in. And do again, and again, door, door, door. You can actually remove a section and just have a an open passageway if you wanted, but if you want to put doors in here, you can, like so. It's not that difficult. There's an erase button as well. I'm just doing this very fast because I just want to demonstrate what you can do. Okay, so that's what you can do. There's an undo button at the top, so if you don't like anything, you can change stuff. You can fiddle around. All of this does a lot of different things. There are people who do actually show you how to use Dungeon Scroll pretty quickly. You can also put in like a rough location, so you can draw in a location like so. If you wanted it's like a natural cave to be involved, or you want something sort of off to the side. Whoops, that was bad. Let's go back. That didn't work. That's better. There we go. So we want to make a shape on the side there. We want to do something a little bit weird, so maybe we want to make a strange shape. Then we can grab this tool and just pick a location, and we just we're going to keep drawing points for it to join to make an unusually shaped room, potentially something that isn't standard sort of rectangle or square. There we go. We've got that room, and if we want to join it up, well, we can do that. We can use this tool if we want. There we go. We've joined it. And or we could use a different tool, doesn't matter. We can also use the this I believe it's a hex tool. Basically you can, let's just undo that for a second. Undo, and I'll do it a bit further out. There we go. We've got a new room, and if we want to join it, we just use this tool at the top for drawing sort of a rectangular, and it's done. We've joined that room. Okay, and of course no doors, that's fine. You can put in stairwells, so if you want a staircase somewhere, then now if I can remember how to use this thing, staircase is in. So yeah, there's a lot of different things you can do with this. This is Dungeon Scroll. Doesn't cost you a thing. You can do whatever you like with it. It just needs you to just fiddle around with it. You can make a map pretty quickly. I would recommend drawing something roughly on a piece of paper by hand, and then doing your basic map here. You can label the thing. So if you're worried about, oh, why can't I label this thing? So you can also, if you use the wheel on your mouse, you can go in and out. So you can go out, and there is an option down the bottom here to add text, just there. Okay, and you can add text. But this is not my let's show you how to do stuff. There are stamps for putting in items and objects within this map as well. There are a whole lot of assets that are free. You don't have to pay for them. Okay, so yeah, this is a tool that anybody can use, and it's free, and I would suggest that you probably want to consider looking at it at least, even if you want to just do rough concept stuff rather than doing something too fancy. Maybe this is a good place to start. If you're only making maps for your own group, then it doesn't matter, does it? So that is Dungeon Scroll. So let's get review. Gonna leave this. Done hex crawl. I've done Dyson, and back to the chat. Hello behind the noob DM screen. So you're probably thinking that only created maps that have like an interior. What if I want, if I want to do buildings? You can do buildings with it. It's a bit more involved. It will require a little bit of a learning curve on your part to figure out how to do that. But there is a way to do that. Okay, so it is there. Those tools do exist. You like my show, John? Well, I'm glad. I want people to come here and like the show. I want you to feel like I'm here to give you tools and assets that you can use that are, not me pitching and selling stuff. I mean, obviously that would help if I did sponsored stuff, probably, because I get paid a lot more, and I understand why the channels do that. But this is about helping you prepare your own game, right? So a lot of the stuff, when I make maps using Dungeon Scroll, you can now port those maps out, and then you can have a copy of it saved. You can save it as a PDF, you can save it as a JPEG, whatever you prefer, and then you can use it. You can even make it transparent, so you can drop it into a document later on for your own use. You wouldn't be able to use these maps and sell. That's the only thing I think you'll find, is you won't be able to use these maps and then make a paid product. But then you're not going to be watching me for learning how to do paid product stuff. You've played with Dungeon Scroll. I think you can spend a lot of time playing with Dungeon Scroll. My advice to you, Nacho Man, is definitely play with Dungeon Scroll. Have a fiddle around, get to grips with how everything works. But you want to go and do some of the lessons, because I actually found it really useful to actually have somebody show me how to find stuff. Somebody who's used to using this sort of software, like OBS, Adobe, or whatever like that, who use drawing software packages, they'll find it easy to navigate. But for me, it's hard. I would find it more difficult. So I need somebody to show me how to do stuff. To print scale on Dungeon Scroll A4 size. Oh, okay. I just think I just closed that all down. I can show you where to go. I'm pretty sure I can show you where to go. Behind the screen. Just give me a second, Nacho Man. I'll just go through the chat, and then I'll go back, and I'll just do one room, and then I'll show you where to go find that stuff. I'm curious of what you think about the maps and locations included in the pre-made adventures. I actually don't have too much of an issue with a lot of the maps and the pre-made adventures. A lot of them are quite small compared to the older ones, which were quite a lot larger. But then again, their adventures, older adventures, were between 35 and 45 pages long, and modern adventures can be anywhere, particularly if it's Wizards of the Coast, can be up to 250 or 230 or 330 pages. They're really big, and they have multiple locations. They're not designed for sort of like one adventure. They are like a whole campaign, so it's a different story. I generally think that Wizards of the Coast maps, I kind of like the style. I know they shift away from Mike Shaley's style of maps, or what's that lady's name that they used to get to do all their maps in the past? I can't remember what her name is. Nice lady, I remember her playing The Lost Mine of Fandel, but what is it? Oh, I can't remember. She also did a lot of maps as well. I think her maps were fine. I think some maps serve some purposes better. If you want a virtual tabletop, Dyson logo is probably not the way to go, right? But if you're drawing your own maps, it is probably the way to go. Do you know what I mean? Because it's super easy to draw out. You're not going to be having time to do all these fancy little details in the map. Thank you, Agile Monk. You think I've done all right? I've also got to show Nacho Man how to print out his or has actually form his map. We'll do that in a second. I think some of their maps are practical and some of them are not. You've got to remember we're dealing with a fantasy world, okay? A lot of the map ideas are probably coming from Chris Perkins because he's the story guy. And Chris Perkins is renowned for his drawing skills and his mapping. He probably has books and books full of maps that he's drawn. And I know Chris has probably done a lot of research because he's that kind of person. So I imagine he takes stuff that he's seen in the past and makes modifications. I am starting to think they were getting too similar. Go to Area X, roll for DC to see if you sense monster, Y, fight monster, etc. Yeah, look, I think ripping apart the pre-made adventures from Wizards of the Coast and other books is actually not a bad idea because you can use them for your own purposes. Why not? I'm so sorry. I'm a very poor person. I wish I can. No, you don't have to worry about that, John. Just watch the stuff. That's fine. Okay, watch the stuff that you like. I make so much stuff now. It's out there for people to decide what they find useful. Okay, if you're a player, you probably want other stuff. If you're a dungeon master, you're looking for other things. Don't worry about that sort of thing. Yeah. There's a reason why I haven't put a paywall between doing these live streams. It's not like they're on Patreon only, exclusive, or on a particular website anymore. There's not a paywall. I want people to find them. Okay, I want people to use this stuff. Can we see some maps that you've made? I don't know if I've got a book on me right now. Do I have a book in my drawers right now? I can show you some other time if you like. But you're not going to be impressed because they're not fancy. I just draw them in. It's not even a gridded pad. It's just like a blank pad, and I just scribble. so I can show you, but probably not today because I would have to get up and try to figure out where it is, and I don't know where it is. So Nacho Man, let's find Dungeon Scroll again, and I will copy that, go into there, and show you where what you're looking for very quickly. Okay. Just before I have to go, which is going to be like very soon. Run it. Okay. Now, where is it? It's down over here. No. That's not the right one. That's the right one. Transitioned. Yep, transitioned. Okay, so, God, I hope I can remember where it is. Okay, so where are we? We will draw a quick 2-room map to give you an idea of what we're dealing with. And put a door in. There we go, map. Okay, now, I believe it's under File, and you can export it. You can download the saved file, I believe it's under Export. And under Export, Downloads, there's a couple of things you can do. It's going to wind up coming out as a PNG. Okay, you can change the pixel rate, but it's already set to 70, which is usually scaled for a virtual tabletop, from my understanding. You can do a screen download if you would prefer. You can use the recommended one option. You can create it as download as a zip. You can make a transparent download so that you can just drop it over something, because you can get rid of all the squares that weren't part of the actual interior part of your map if you want to. There's a way of doing that. I'm not going to show you today. You can select the page size. It can be A4, portrait, if you want it portrait, or landscape. If you want landscape, you can change it to that. And there's a few other options here. Okay, I'm going to suggest you're probably going to want to use either your PDF option which is where, I can't remember it. PDF. There's a splitting option as well, experimental. Okay, so we can shape the rectangle and make it a PDF. I think this is this one here. It's going to make a PDF here. There we go. There it is. There it is. So it's going to turn it into a PDF. If we want it transparent, we can make it transparent too. But we won't press that button. We'll do the recommended option. Okay, this is this option here. Now it comes up with a screen. We now need to use our selector to draw around our map to select the area to be turned into the PDF. Like so. And where are we? Did it get it done? Yep, it saved the file onto my computer. That's it. It's done. It's as simple as that. It's super simple. So if you're worried about it being complicated, I can assure you it's not. It's very, very easy. All I did was draw around the map and automatically created a PDF that I can now use. I believe it is a PDF. Does it come out as a PDF or does it come out as a PNG? PDF. Oh, it's coming out as a PNG. Hang on. Yeah, that's a PNG. That's not what you wanted. Watching the stream and click on the thumbnails. Off topic. Can we request topics for your tutorials in the future? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. I may not be able to do it straight away, but yes, you absolutely can. So now's the time. I've got a couple more minutes before I leave. Now that downloaded it as not what you were after. Export, download, save file, export. That's not the one I wanted. Screen, zip. It's PNG. Inches, got that. Why can't I find it? I can't find it. I won't muck around and try to find something that for the life of me right now I can't think of. But yes, you can. I'm not the best person to teach you how to use Dungeon Scroll. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I've used it, but I haven't used it that much. Yeah. So yes, make some requests. You can leave those requests in the chat if you want. You can just leave them in the comment section underneath videos. If you're a patron, my suggestion to you is Nacho Man. You were asking me a question on Patreon just recently, and the answer to your question that you posed on Patreon is give it a go. I've never actually tried it before, but you never know. See what happens. That would be my suggestion. Okay, so if you do have requests, to give you an idea of what's going to be happening with the locations, the preparation around locations, we've done towns, we've done tombs, mostly Egyptian tombs. We've done castles, not quite the way you might have expected, but we've done covered castles, and in the future we probably will draw some castles as well. Maybe just not today. We're going to cover pyramids. I'm going to cover the basic structure of a mine, and there's something else that I'm probably going to do. For those of you who are aware, there was a book called Volo's Guide to Monsters, right? And Volo's Guide to Monsters had a lot of really cool stuff in it, like things that you would think everybody would want to use. The only problem is it's become legacy content. Like you can't get access to it anymore. And that's a shame, right? But the good news is that somebody who follows the channel has made sure that I can have access to it. Okay. What does that mean? That means that we can go through and we can actually use those different locations. And I have every intention in the future of covering different locations that have kind of monster lairs or setups for them that I think that you would find useful, and then we are going to take what they have and we're going to turn it into a two-dimensional map because I thought that would be fun to do. And one of the probably the first ones that I'm going to attempt, depending on what people say and how they feel, is I am very keen on attempting something like the beholder layer. Like, let me just show you what I mean before I disappear. Let's crank me up a little bit. So can you see that? That there is, it's kind of like what we're after, but we're gonna try to make our own map from this. Okay, so that's a beholder layer, and Volo's Guide to Everything gives you a whole lot of information on what would be in different locations, which is awesome. We also have, no, it's not the one I want. There's a bunch of others, but I can't find them all easily, apparently. That's the beholder, and then we got giants, earth shakers. So giants have a map included as well that we can utilize and do something with. Where are you, you little sucker? I don't think I'm going to be able to find it. Darn it. I think you get the gist. So I'm looking towards covering different monster layer areas, things that you'd probably use in your game, because the layout for them is going to be very similar. So once we make the map up, it's reusable. We'll make it a transparency, so you can just drop it in. It won't be a PDF, so you can just drop it into any document you want. I'll put it up. I'll make sure they go up onto Patreon when we do these as well. And I, for the life of me, cannot find the goddamn thing for this. I know it's here. I know it's here. It's just going to take me a long time to find everything. Anyway, let's jump out of that, and let's wrap things up before I wind up being late for work. Could be late for work. That would be bad, wouldn't it? But you get the idea. So that's where we're going for the future. Okay. Thank you again to Agile Monk for the super chat. Okay. Yeah, the time loop question, Nacho. Try it out. I've considered doing a time loop question, time loop adventure in the past. It's up to you. Brad, excellent live stream. Good information. Thank you. Do you normally DM the adventures from Wizards of the Coast? Not all of them. Only the ones that I like. Or do you do your own thing? I do a mix. I mix things up. I will use pre-made adventures and make my own stuff up. I find most people tend to do that. Sometimes I use the whole structure of an adventure. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I use Lego bricks. I don't have one set way that I do anything. Unfortunately, I can't give you that's the way I do things. And even if I did, I wouldn't want you to do what I do. I want you to do what you do rather than what I do. You do what works for you, okay? All right. So I want to say thank you to all of my patrons. Thank you to Agile Monk for the super sticker today. Thank you for all my patrons who have been supporting me. Everything that I do will go up on Patreon. You just need to be patient. It will all wind up there eventually, including all the resources. Thank you to everybody who's been part of my live streams and been watching them and watching the replays and watching my edited videos. I appreciate the support. It really does make things better for me if the experience is good for you and you take part, and we get to actually develop sort of like a relationship and understanding about what you need and what I need to try to offer to you to make your life easier, whether you're a player or a dungeon master. Dungeon master preparation is every week. We do it every week. So wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, or the night, or the wee early morning, please look after yourself, your family, and your friends. Be nice to your neighbours. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. John, no, I do not stream my group. It's way too dangerous. They are too naughty. YouTube and Twitch would ban me if I wound up putting them on live, even if they would agree to it, which they probably wouldn't. I've tried it before.